Hello, welcome back to Hazel Jane Tarot. Gia Dave, August Fulcharash. Hello and welcome back. Today, as you can see from the title, we're going to have a chat about my April and May favourites from 2022. So sorry I haven't been as prolific on YouTube over the last couple of months as I had been previously. My goal had been to have 4 videos a month posted this year, and I've only managed 2 in May. Life has just got a lot busier again. Things are pretty much back to normal here in Northern Ireland, and so there's out and about a lot more kind of social events happening. And I just haven't had as much free time to do things like this, but I've grabbed a little bit of quiet time to have a chat with you about my favourites this evening. We're back into having those lovely long evenings, so we have a bit more daylight. So anyway, my favourites in April and May, I have to say one of my favourite things was I posted my decks I'm moving on video, or decks is going to get rid of, and there was a lot of interaction on that video, lots of comments, and chatting to people in the comments about like the decks that they would never dream of getting rid of, or that they had also moved on. It was just really good fun. I really enjoyed all the conversations around that video, and then also the process of posting some of the decks for sale. And some people were asking where I posted them, and so far I've just been using Facebook buy sell trade groups. So I posted a few, sold a couple initially, and then I used the trading group, UK trading group, and did a couple of swaps as well. So the first thing I wanted to share with you are the new decks that have come into my collection in the last 2 months. Now, trading doesn't solve the problem of storage, but it does give you that real kind of shopping buzz of getting a new deck without having to actually spend any money apart from just swap postage, and you both pay postage, so it's kind of, and it's even on that front. And I have to say I really enjoy the process of trading decks. The decks that I traded for this month I haven't used at all yet, so I'm just showing them to you. So the first trade that I did was for the Oracle, the Divine Feminine Oracle, and I got this Oracle of the 7 Energies by Colette Baron-Reid in return. So I have one Colette Baron-Reid deck, which you're going to be seeing later, that I use quite a lot, but this deck I hadn't previously used. It's also art by Jenna Della Grottaglia, who Colette Baron-Reid collaborates with a lot. So I thought that the art was really pretty and that the keywords seemed nice, although I think with Colette Baron-Reid decks, part of what you're getting is the little guidebook and the entries in the guidebook. So going by just the keyword and trying to go from that yourself, you sort of miss out on what's in the guidebook. So I haven't used this yet at all. I maybe shuffled it and had a look through it, but I haven't pulled any cards from it yet, and I think I will be using it quite soon. Some of the art is like that is reminiscent of an image I've seen in another one of her decks, but mostly they're different images. So yeah, as you can see, it's very pretty. They're matte cards. And the Oracle of the Divine Feminine, I hadn't been getting along with it because it just with the artwork in it, I didn't really enjoy that much. But I've already spoken about that, so I'll not go on about that. But I was delighted to get this. So something new to try, which is still waiting for me to have time to play with it on my shelves. I'm having a little glass of wine this evening while I'm chatting to you. Today is a public holiday, so so I've got a bit more free time as well. So the other swap that I did was I swapped the Amenti Oracle for this deck, the Wildwood Tarot. So when it comes to swaps, what I tend to do is, like you post, you're looking through a trade group and people have certain things for trade, and it's not like this was on my list. It's just like I saw somebody was trading it and I went, oh, I wouldn't mind getting that actually. And then they, she told them what I'd got, and they were like, oh, I wouldn't mind the Amenti Oracle. And so we did a little swap. This 2-part box, this is not gonna, it's not gonna live in here. I'm going to have to get a bag for it. So anyway, the Wildwood Tarot you may already be familiar with. It's quite a different system than a standard tarot. Like, these are the measures. They seem to be in order. I don't know what's happened to the rest of them. Oh, yeah, there they are. So we've got the Wanderer instead of the Fool, the Shaman instead of the Magician, the Seer instead of the High Priestess, the Green Woman instead of the Empress. So there's a lot of changes. The suits have also been renamed. So we have stones, which I think is instead of pentacles. We have vessels for cups. The court cards are all animals, and sort of that kind of animal life. It's based on a sort of Celtic kind of druidry style spirituality, as far as I know. I haven't fully read the book yet. But obviously, being Irish, this does really appeal to me, actually. During the month of April, I actually had a holiday in Donegal, which is in the northwest of Ireland, with my family. And one of the places we visited is like a new sort of animal sanctuary, kind of zoo type place. It's not a zoo, but it's called Wild Ireland. And one of the things they have is like animals, examples of animals that used to live in Ireland but don't, because they went extinct, thousands of years ago, like a lynx, like a bear. So having been there really recently and then seeing the animals in this deck, I was like, oh, right, okay. And they had wolves. They literally had, in Wild Ireland, they had a lynx. They didn't have any horses, but they had a bear. They had wolves, or a couple of bears. So some of these animals that used to live naturally, natively in my country, but went extinct, a millennium or more ago, are featured in this deck, and I encountered them just this month as well. So that was kind of an interesting coincidence. But yes, there's a lot to learn in this deck, and I haven't even really started looking. The guidebook, which is by Mark Ryan and John Matthews, is has plenty in it, and it's going to take quite some diving into, but I haven't really had a chance yet. If you work with the Wildwood Tarot, I'd love to know what you think of it, or any tips you have about working with it. Will Worthington is the artist. He also illustrated the Druidcraft Tarot, which I have and have worked very productively with in the past. So I'm interested to see where this takes me. I'm a bit of a sucker for an Irish deck at the minute, for obvious reasons. So speaking of Irish decks, if you have been watching the videos I've released recently, you will have seen this already. This is an oracle deck called The Wisdom of the Kalyak. I cannot remember the name of the creator because I do not have the book right next to me, but I will post in the information below the link to, or the name of her anyway. You order the deck by emailing and paying by PayPal, and then she posts the deck out to you. This was not cheap. I think it was around £80. And one of the reasons I was able to afford to get this is that I'd sold a few decks on through the Facebook trade. So I had sold some of the decks. People were thinking, why would you ever sell like the Dark Mansion? And I sold my Shimmering Veil Tarot, which neither of them, beautiful both, but hadn't been using them. They've both gone on to good homes. And then I had the money sitting in my PayPal account, and I was able to use that to buy this. And as an Irish deck, I'm really delighted to have it by an Irish creator. The art just really speaks to me. It's very beautiful, feels very wintry. I haven't used it at all yet. It's still completely in order, pretty much, or close to. But I mean, these landscapes, like I know these landscapes, I've been to these places, I know that weather, I know that tree, this is not that specific exact place, but places like that I'm very familiar with. So this deck really speaks to me. I know some people might find that, it's a small number of cards and it's very expensive. So it might not be a deck for everyone, for, somebody who's just collecting. But if you're looking specifically to connect with crone energy, you're looking specifically for an Irish deck, I think this is a really special one. So I'm looking forward to working with it a bit more. And I feel like it and the Wildwood Tarot actually might go together quite well. And it came with this little black bag. Both of these sort of feel to me like they they lean towards the winter time of the year, although of course the Wildwood Tarot I think is themed by seasons, so fits the whole year. But anyway, I haven't had a proper look at it yet. So those are my new decks. What have I been working with then? Because it hasn't been them. It hasn't been the new decks. So we've been, in the month of April and May, working up to the festival of Beltane, the month of Beltane. So Abran is April and Beltane is May in Irish. So the Beltane Oracle is one of the decks I have used a bit. I haven't used it loads. A very confronting card just popped out on top. I did actually film an unboxing of this with a lot of my initial reactions. And this was one of the cards that I was really blown away by. But I haven't posted that unboxing. I think it was just one of those things where there was just loads of people had filmed unboxings of it, and I didn't really think it was necessary, although I might do a little review of it now that I have worked with it a little bit. I really like this deck. I like it better than I like the Yule Oracle, although it's a series, they all kind of chime together. But I think they've solved some issues with the wording of these little poems that I'd had with the last edition of this. I really like the colour theming through it with the gold and yellows and the honey and the bees. The vibe is very much in this deck. It's about, fertility and sex and connection and, joy and abundance and celebration. And, it's quite, it's a May deck. And the way the messages of the different elements of the Beltane festival have been woven into the meanings in the guidebook is quite interesting. So I have been enjoying working with this. So it's kind of a sexy deck, if you know what I mean. It's a nice deck. 18 plus. So I was using that, and I was actually using this in combined readings together with the Victorian Romantic Tarot, which was quite a heady combination. The Victorian Romantic Tarot I had pre-ordered last year, and I filmed an unboxing of it. And while it is very beautiful, I think I expressed in that unboxing some reservations about the deck and whether I would be able to work with it, especially whether I would really get along with it. Well, I find this deck works really well for me. It reads really clearly. I really like the atmosphere that it creates in a reading. So when you lay out a bunch of cards, the sort of story that they tell and the way those cards interact with each other, I find that that works really, really well. I also like, I didn't when I first flicked through it, the sort of muted quality to the colours, but now that I've been reading with it, I like the muted quality of the colours. I think it they're very full, they're full colour cards, and they have this sort of glittery cold foil stamping on them. But in a spread, because the colours are sort of all of a tone, sort of toned down together, it means that in a reading it's not overwhelming for the eyes, if that makes sense. I used this in readings about particular questions or issues I was having. I did a kind of a Beltane reading. I did a few readings for like different phases of the moon and stuff through the last couple of months with the Beltane Oracle and the Victorian Romantic Tarot together. And then I also used the Victorian Romantic Tarot on its own. And I used this to do something that I used to do all the time on Instagram and had stopped doing for a while, but like daily readings for whoever reads them, or, for the collective, as it were, or for whoever comes across it. I know there's a bit of skepticism about that as a reading. What's the word I'm looking for? Like as a style of reading. And I don't for a minute think that I can pull cards that speak to every single person that sees my Instagram post. However, it is a really good exercise in terms of getting acquainted with the deck and working with the deck, sort of creating a narrative, creating a reading, and finding how one day flows into the next over the course of a week and so on. And I really enjoyed working with this for that week activity as well. So I'm hoping to be able to keep doing my sort of a week with various decks in the coming months. And I really will be continuing to use the Victorian Romantic Tarot. I have no intention of putting it away anytime soon. I really, really enjoyed that. So for the other decks I was using, I switched sort of midway through April to using the Wisdom of the Oracle by Kalyak. So this is one of my all-time favourite Oracle decks. I absolutely love this deck. And one of the reasons for that is it was one of the first Oracle decks I ever got. I think it was the second or third deck maybe. So the art is by Jenna Della Grottaglia. And it's one of those decks by Kalyak that is designed to work with upright and reversals, the reversals being a protection message. And the little guidebook, which is pretty well thumbed by me and has held up very well. To me, this is an integral part of reading with this deck, is reading the messages in the little guidebook. This deck is very, what's the right word? It tells it like it is. This deck is not, even though it is very pretty, it is not a fluffy hold your handy kind of deck. Also, this is the deck that I brought with me when I visited Delphi in Greece. I'm sorry, I know some of you have heard the story a lot of times before. But when I was in Greece, I visited Delphi. I brought this deck with me. And when I was walking around the ruins of Delphi, I was shuffling this deck. I pulled one card, and this was the card that I pulled, Higher Power, which felt very kind of appropriate for the occasion. And when we got to the temple at the top of the hill where the oracle had been in ancient times, it's sort of roped off. You can't get in around the actual temple ruin, but I reached under the rope and left my deck on the steps of the temple to sort of charge with the energies of the place. And so as a result, this deck feels very, very special to me. So it has in the past really drawn my attention to things that sometimes it's not until after the fact you realise what it was talking about. But yeah, I don't pull this deck out if there's something I don't want to know about, if that makes sense, because you're going to know about it with this deck. So it's beautiful. I've had it for a long time. And I think one of the reasons I took it out was that with this thing of like deck acquisition, of always, buying or trading or getting new decks, you sort of can forget to work with the ones that when you only had 4 or when you only had 1 or 2 worked for you day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out. And then they don't get handled because you've got this new shiny thing. But they're still valuable, those older decks. So this has been out and been worked with for daily card pulls for about a month, and I've been really enjoying it. As you know, I was at night time had like a separate sort of daily, nightly card pull that I was doing, and I was using, at the end of March, when I last spoke to you about this, I was using the Animal Woman deck by Jessica Zinchik. And I sort of got, I think I mentioned the last time that the images are a bit confronting, and I was having them out on display in my bedroom, so I wanted to change to something else that was a bit less confronting for, my daughter and so on. And so I pulled this out, the Angels and Ancestors deck by Cal Gray and art by Lily Moses. I really love the art in this. I think it's beautiful. But I only used it for my nighttime card pulls for a couple of days this time around. It wasn't really speaking to me, I have to say. The Star Ancestor thing it doesn't really connect with me, I have to say, but that's not the majority of this deck. But it wasn't really connecting with me, and I decided instead around the midway through April to pull out the Tarot of the Mystical Moments by Catherine Weltstein instead. Now this deck is also particularly special to me because it was sent to me by my friend Kenneth from Common Hawthorne. If you don't follow his channel, go follow his channel. He had got this deck and wasn't really using it, and it was very hard to get in the UK at the time. So he sent this across to me, which I really appreciate. And so it makes me think of Kenneth. But this deck is just so beautiful, and it has been lovely for a nightly card pull because it's, you know, it's tarot messages, so it's kind of straightforward and easy to read that way. But also it's it very much feels like May vibes to me. It's bright and colourful and full of flowers and birds, and you know, just when you look out the window, that's what, you know, you can see flowers and birds. So I'm really enjoying this as a deck to work with at this time of year. I don't normally organise my readings seasonally, or I didn't think I did, but I'm starting to see that that actually is something that does matter to me in a way. So I've really been enjoying this as a May deck, and like it's just so pretty. And it's also one that I'm very happy for my daughter to pull cards from or see on display. And one thing I love is that it fans like a dream. So with a deck like this that is so shiny and fans so beautifully, that's how I tend to pull cards from it, rather than my normal way, which would be to do to have jumpers, like shuffle and just take the cards that jump out. I really enjoy a very glossy, slidey fan. And the big reason that I appreciate it so much is because when I had broken my right hand a couple of years ago and I couldn't shuffle, the only way I could randomize the cards was to use a deck that fanned really nicely. And it's not to be sniffed at, as I know some people don't like glossy cardstock, but a smooth fanning deck is a lovely thing. So those are all the decks that I have been working with. So let's have a chat about a few other things then. We're 22 minutes in, so I'll try not to ramble on too much, but one of the favourites of April and May has got to be Dairy Girls on TV. So for those of you outside of the UK or outside Northern Ireland, I think Dairy Girls has actually been shown internationally on Netflix, so you might have seen some of it. There have been 2 previous seasons. They're short seasons, short episodes, and I rewatched all of season 1 and 2 in anticipation of season 3 airing, and it was quite appointment TV here in Northern Ireland. Derry is a city in the northwest of Northern Ireland, small city. It's not too far from where I grew up, so I would have been there frequently as a teenager, as a child. So I'm very familiar with the city, with the accent. And also Dairy Girls, the TV series, is set in the 90s, and the characters are very similar age to me. I think I worked out we're only about a year apart. So everything about the TV show of Dairy Girls, I'm probably starting to sound more and more dairy as I'm talking. But everything about Dairy Girls is nostalgic for me. The music, and even just going to a convent school and the nuns, and I mean, obviously it's really farcical and over the top, but it really does hit a lot of home truths too, and it's very funny. And yeah, I mean, just rewatching the whole 3 seasons was a joy. And season 3, like every week when it aired, people were talking about it the next day on social media, talking about it. Old friends from school reconnected with me, inspired by having seen it on, you know, and it reminding them of their school days. And then the final episode, which, sorry to spoiler for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, but it focuses on the Good Friday Agreement, which was in 1998, I think. And it you know, is the run-up to them voting in the referendum about the Good Friday Agreement. And that has inspired so many conversations among friends and family, remembering that time, remembering what it used to be like. I mean, because I was 19, I voted in that referendum. And, you know, there was a bit in the last episode of Dairy Girls where the Granda says to Orla, the main character, not to Orla, the main character, can't remember her name right now, where the Granda says to her, you know, in the future, children, your own children, might not believe that the world was ever like this. And once again, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. But that really hit home with a lot of us who are of an age to remember the Troubles, and that things have changed so much. And I mean, it's not perfect now by any means. There's still a lot of tensions. If you follow the news about Northern Ireland, there's always something. But yeah, like it really was very moving for a lot of people, the way she dealt with that moment of transition that was that Good Friday Agreement referendum. And like the writers of Derry Girls she has a way of moving from humour to absolutely poignant in an instant. And the cast are just so good, and everybody in it is just so perfect in the role. It is that thing of like much older people playing teenagers, but who cares? We're well used to that from Grease and onwards. But no, and the parents and the auntie and the uncle. Kevin McLear plays the uncle. He's so funny. So hopefully I've been editing in pictures of some of these characters to show you as I've been talking, but I loved it. I couldn't say enough about how much I loved season 3 and all 3 seasons of Derry Girls. It's now over. There's not going to be any more, but yeah, so it was great. So if you want an insight into life in the 90s in Northern Ireland, you could do worse than give it a watch. Bearing in mind it is a comedy, so it's not exactly it's not a documentary like. But yeah, so Derry Girls was brilliant. Other highlights, I went to the theatre this month. I went to see a couple of things actually, but the highlight was this professional production of Translations, a play by Brian Friel in the Lyric Theatre. It was an Abbey Theatre, which is the main theatre in Dublin, and the Lyric Theatre, which is the main theatre in Belfast, or main producing theatre. It was a co-production between those 2 theatres, and it was a beautiful show. I'll see if there's some pictures in the programme. So Brian Friel is a very noted playwright, not musicals. I know I've talked about musicals before, but this is just a straight play. His work is very well respected, although he's sort of not as fashionable as he used to be. No, the photos in this are of older productions of old plays of his from like the 60s and 70s. There's Liam Neeson apparently in his very first Lyric Theatre production in 1976, or not his first, maybe just an early one. But yeah, this was great. The play Translations explores the moment in history where, I think it's set in 1833, and it explores the moment in history where Irish is being replaced by English, the establishment of national schools where only English is taught, the advancement of English through, you need it for jobs and so on. It's in a moment before the Great Famine, before the massive waves of migration that marked that period, as well as the deaths that marked that period. And it's set in a hedge school, like a little country private school where adults are learning classics and arithmetic and things like that. It's a very good play. If you get a chance, you could read it even. Translations by Brian Friel. But yeah, it was very interesting, very thought-provoking. I really enjoyed that production. So that was this month. What else? I went to see some live music. So the performer was Ciara O'Neill, who I've mentioned on this channel before. She is a Northern Irish singer-songwriter, and this is one of her albums. I have the other one as well. So I'll put a link below to maybe one of her videos on YouTube, but I would really encourage you to go and listen to her. I know artists don't make a lot of money from streams on Spotify and the like, but it'll send a couple of pence their way, I'm sure. So her genre of music is kind of like, she would describe it as dark folk, and a very lovely singer. So really enjoyed that. And the support artist at the gig was this guy, Niall McNamee. He is from Dublin, and his style of music was a little bit more Irish, kind of bit of folk inflection, tiny bit country maybe, but very much the Irish accent coming through. And I really enjoyed his songs. They were very narrative, and I've been listening to this CD quite a bit actually over the last couple of weeks. So Niall McNamee, you could check him out as well. I'll see if I can post a video of his below as well if you're interested. I also had a little day trip where I got to go to see, I was looking for the grave of St. Bridget, and it turned out that she is buried in the same grave as St. Patrick at St. Patrick's Cathedral in Downpatrick in Northern Ireland. So I drove to Downpatrick one rainy afternoon, and I walked up to the cathedral, and I was kind of disappointed to see how, I mean, it is Downpatrick, it's Patrick. It's all signposted, the grave of St. Patrick, and St. Bridget is like also there. You know, it's very much in the, I'll see if I can, hopefully there's a picture on the screen of the plaque on the grave which says that, you know, also St. Connell and St. Bridget are buried here. So my understanding is that St. Bridget, St. Connell and St. Patrick were buried in different places, and then the remains of St. Connell and St. Bridget were removed and interred with St. Patrick's to fulfill some sort of prophecy. And I think they were buried at a number of different sites around the mound in Downpatrick where the cathedral is, before they were moved to their current location, which is just under a big stone, as you can see in the photo. The man who was volunteering that day in the cathedral told me that there is some rumours or talk that there were 3 separate grave locations next to each other in the previous site that they were removed from, but it was centuries ago, so I'm not sure the truth of that now. But so whatever there is remaining of St. Bridget, she doesn't have her own grave. She's mixed in along with St. Connell and St. Patrick in Downpatrick. So it was kind of sad. I did feel when I stood at the site the kind of the erasure of St. Bridget and St. Connell, but I don't have much of an attachment to him. But I felt the erasure of St. Bridget, and when I compared that to, say, visiting Kildare, where St. Bridget had her monastery and where there are a number of sites that are sacred to St. Bridget, it just felt sad by comparison. So I'm hoping to make a pilgrimage to Foggart, where Bridget was supposed to have been born, at some point over the next couple of months. And when I do, I'll share some pictures of that with you. But I also posted this month a video, which you maybe have seen, about working with Bridget. And in the latter part of that video, I include photographs of all the sites that I've been to do with Bridget in Ireland. So if you're interested in finding out a bit more about that, you could check out that video as well. All right, so the last thing then I've got to talk about with you today is books. So if you're still hanging on in there, 32 minutes, we're going to have a chat about books. So the audiobooks have maybe again been the highlight. I seem to be picking really well when it comes to audiobooks. The first one that I listened to was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, which hopefully has magically appeared on screen. So The Night Circus had been recommended to me. I had read The Starless Sea, and I had been told that The Night Circus was even better than The Starless Sea. I would disagree. I loved The Starless Sea. I really loved it. I loved the sort of the textures of The Starless Sea with the different narratives in it. But I'll not go on about it now. The Night Circus was also lovely. I really enjoyed the central storyline, although the pacing was a bit uneven, but I did enjoy the central storyline. I enjoyed the characters. The narrator on Audible, some of the voices were a bit surprising for the characters, but overall I really enjoyed his narration. And one of the characters is a tarot reader, and they use a black and white, like a grayscale Marseille deck. And oh, how I would love to have a grayscale Marseille deck like the one exactly that's described in The Night Circus. But yes, I really enjoyed it. It was a long listen, but it was worth it. And the other Audible that I've been listening to, I'm not completely finished yet, I've still maybe 4 hours left to go, is it's called The Once and Future Witches. And the author's name hopefully is appearing before you because I forget what it is. It's really good. I'm really enjoying this. It's beautifully written. The story centers around three sisters who are trying to bring back the lost way of Avalon, to bring back witchcraft to women. It's set in a kind of Victorian times America, in a town called New Salem. It's a kind of alternative history, you know, where witchcraft was much more of a thing, and the old Salem was burnt to the ground because of witchcraft. And you know, so it's like an alternative parallel universe almost, like a more magical alternative past kind of thing. So it's really, really nicely written. I'm very much enjoying the turn of phrase of the writer. And the plot is not, it's, you know, it's not a pacey novel. Like, a lot happens, but and some of the scenes are quite gripping, but it sort of is walking along rather than racing along. But I am very much enjoying the story, and I'm not rushing through it. So that, if you want a fiction story that is about witches and magic, it's really enjoyable. So some other stuff that I read a book of poetry called Let Them Eat Chaos. Kay Tempest was the writer. Really enjoyed this, very stirring. You can tell that Kay Tempest does sort of a spoken word performative poetry, but it reads very well off the page too. And this told like a number of narratives that really captured a bleak existential kind of image of Britain, modern Britain. Was good. It was a good confronting book, quick read, but really worth reading. So that's Let Them Eat Chaos. I also read some very light fiction. I read this book called The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary, which is a kind of a funny, it's not even really that funny, but it's a kind of one of those, it's like a romantic comedy that you would see made into a film. She works days, he works nights. She rents his flat when he's not in it, basically, and you can see where it goes from there. But it actually does deal with some kind of stuff about coercive control in relationships, which was kind of interesting. The writer kind of snuck that in there. But that was a nice book. I enjoyed it. Just sort of, a light read. And another one that I read was by, what's her name again? It should be on the screen for you. Us Three was the name of the novel, by Ruth Jones. Ruth Jones, who's one of the writers of Gavin and Stacey for TV, which was such a great show. I loved that. Us Three explores sort of the relationships and friendship of three female characters over a number of decades, and sort of miscommunications and the different things that happen over the years. And again, more dramatic than funny, actually, in terms of the content. There's a lot of stuff about grief and fertility, and just the kind of stuff that happens to people over the course of their lives. So yeah, I found it and not always fun, but an enjoyable read, a good story. And the other book I've been reading is this Aspecting the Goddess by Jane Meredith. This has been a bit of a slow read, and I'm nearly finished it. I'm not quite done yet. So there I am, nearly at the end. I have found this interesting, but I haven't loved it. This, I think, if you're looking for... it's a very interesting book on the idea of working with a goddess. Like, what do people mean when they say working with a goddess? If you have that question in your mind, this book is one writer's answer to what she means when she says she works with a goddess. So it goes through a couple of different ways of interacting with goddess. So she's walking with a goddess, researching a goddess, dedicating to a goddess, presencing a goddess, enacting myth, and then aspecting. All of these are, apart from researching, so walking with and presencing and enacting, they're imaginative engagements with the archetype, the story of particular deities. This writer presents at the beginning her belief system really is a kind of I hope I'm not mischaracterizing this, but a kind of soft polytheism where where there is a goddess energy, and that God energy, goddess energy can be embodied by all these different figures. So kind of like one goddess and another goddess are equally viable, equally powerful, equally available kind of thing. And that approach won't resonate with everyone, but I think it was interesting to see how that then plays out for her, because every chapter explores her relationship with two goddesses. So we have the stories of Persephone and Belitha, Isis and Mary, Aphrodite and Ereshkigal, Nephthys, I think, and Freya, Ariadne and Inanna, and then Eve and Star Goddess. So I'm in the middle of the Inanna story at the moment, and this writer is particularly dedicated to Ereshkigal and Inanna, which are Sumerian goddesses. So it's interesting. It is interesting. And I think as long as you were reading, it's not a book that would teach me how to work with a goddess. It's more just intriguing to see how someone else. It's meant very seriously. It's very heartfelt. She shares a lot of personal stories about her own journeys with these different deities, and yeah, it's just really it's interesting. It is interesting. But the takeaway for anybody as who isn't, maybe a lot of it's biographical, her personal experience. The takeaways are these parts, which is like exercise, like rituals, working with a goddess, or like how to research a goddess, how to dedicate to a goddess, how to presence a goddess, and so on. So those are the bits that are kind of the takeaways for anyone. And then in between are her personal stories of working with different goddesses. So in some ways, I think if you're more of a hard polytheist and you had a very certain belief in the discrete identity of a goddess, this book wouldn't fully resonate, but the tips on how to work with that goddess might, even if you weren't polytheist in your approach. Well, not polytheist as in like, do you know what I mean? Even if you didn't sort of equally weight all goddesses, if you were really specifically working with one, you could still use some of the activities to work with that one, your one. So yeah, it's an interesting enough book. It's maybe not one I'll hold on to forever, but I will finish it, and I am glad that I've read it because it is very interesting. Okay, and then the last thing I want to share with you is my favourite kids book of the last couple of months. My new favourite discovery is this writer, Chris Houghton. So we got both of these books at the same time. This book is available in English as well. So Ar Stray Beagán is a little bit lost. So this is an Irish translation of one of Chris Houghton's books. I presume it's a he, I don't know, could be a Chris, could be a she, Chris. But Chris Houghton is writing in English, and then the other is translated. The illustrations are just so funny, and the writing, it's just, my daughter, who just turned 4 last week, laughs her head off at these books. Like, so in this one, they're wanting to go down and get the mangoes, the delicious yummy mangoes, and they're trying to come down out of the trees, and they're saying like, no tigers here, no tigers there, no tigers anywhere, it's safe. But look, there's tigers hiding. And my daughter is like shrieking, going, no, the tigers. It has inspired us to buy mangoes and to eat mangoes. Anyway, she finds these cheeky monkeys absolutely hilarious. And Ar Stray Beagán is lovely, a little bit lost. It's about a little owl that falls out of its mummy's nest, and then it gets lost. And the squirrel, the red squirrel, the Irarua, is like, are you okay? And he says, I'm lost. Cowell Mawami, where's my mummy? And he says, I know where your mummy is. So it's one of those stories where you say, like, my mummy's very big. Tamawami and war Marshaw. She's really big like this. And he says, Tigam go my who are say Rua. Lan Misha. Shotty the whammy. Of course it's not, so hysterics ensue from my daughter. But I really enjoy the wee pattern of it. You know, I'm saying tig him, like I know, this is your mommy, and it's just like with big eyes and big ears and so on. And then of course she finally gets back to the mommy. It's her. Tattoo on, it's you. And then they all go back and eat biscuits. And it's just so cute and funny. So there's a number of other books by this writer, and my daughter got a book voucher for her birthday, so I'm going to be strongly encouraging her to track down the other books by this writer because they're just so funny and cute. So if you have a small person, I recommend seeking out Chris Houghton in the library or something, because his books are really funny. So if you have watched all the way to the 45 minutes end of my video, sláinte, cheers, thank you for watching. And I'm hoping to do some VRs to some of the hashtags that have been going around over the last couple of months that I've missed. And hopefully I'll be able to bring those to you over the coming weeks, so it won't be quite so quiet on my channel. But thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you again soon. Slán.